Okay, we're starting out part 5 of this video, and what I'm going to do here is here's some 1-inch dowel that I've had for quite a few years, and we're going to cut off a piece about 1 inch long, and we're going to shove it up into this, up to this area here. And before we do that, we're going to drill a hole in the dead center of this. So what that's going to do is then enable this rod, which I'm going to be using the brass rod, of course, as I had mentioned. So that'll keep it centered going in here. So what's going to happen is the rod's going to come out and it'll turn like this. So I got to cut a slot here about 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch wide, about halfway through this pipe. And then I got to cut a slit down lengthwise. I'll probably use my Dremel tool for that. And that way, this end cap, when it gets put in here, after I cut this and insert the wire, this end cap can be used like I want it to be used, with a cup hook in the end for a rubber band to hold it down, to hold the stock and the head stick straight down to the bottom of the torso. So what I got to do first is to cut, like I say, about 1 inch off of this. Then I'll put it in my drill press and try to get the dead center of this and drill down, drill a hole about maybe 1/8 or a little bigger than 1/8 inch to allow this rod to go through. That'll keep the rod centered, because I need a place like a hinge point, if you want to call it that, so that the rod is centered, it's not moving all over the place. Because up in here, the rod will come out through the center hole here and come out this little hole. I don't know if you can see it. Right there below the, well, you can see it right there. That'll keep it centered there when it comes up into this mechanism. Well, mark the center as close as I could. This is about 1 inch, 1.5 inches long. And that's all that's needed. Oh, I hear somebody. Hey, Sammy. He has to come visit me. Hi. Hi. How you doing, Sammy? The humidity has dropped a little bit, so I can do a little bit of work today. So after I get this hole drilled, and I'll put this thing up in through here, slide it up, it'll come to a stop at the pin that I'm going to put in here, but I'm going to have to do that first, because I got to put that eye bolt back in for my mouth contraption arrangement here. And then once I get that thing in there, it'll probably, I think it'll probably be stopping right about here, because I have to have the place for my finger to go, probably my little finger, I guess, to operate the eyes. So that's going to take a little doing, because I got to bend this brass rod to fit properly. If I screw up, I got to cut it all out of there and get another brass rod, because you try to straighten them out, it will not work out too well. Now, as I mentioned so many times in this video and other videos, doing my own photography work here, so I can't really videotape every single step of the way. Now, what I did is I put my bolt back. Instead of using that clamp that I had, I put this bolt in here, and if you notice, I got a piece of Teflon tubing, because this rope here gets bound up because it's so ribbed. I should have used a thinner nylon rope, but I could have gone to the hardware store and got a thinner one that's a lot smoother. But I've already got this, and it's already in here, so I'm not going to go changing it. So instead, I put this piece of nylon tubing in here, because it'll be a lot smoother with the eye hook. And this end of the eye hook here will be cut off, and there'll be tape around it, so there'll be no sharp edges on there. So this is the tubing I had bought. I bought just 1 foot of it. And it's going to act as a bushing. It gives a little smoother action to this mechanism here. On this end here, there'll be another eye bolt, but I don't need one of these because this is going to terminate right here, and there'll be a knot at the end of this. But I'm going to make it so that I can adjust it a little bit, tighten it up. You got to remember that I can't keep this too tight, because if I do, it's going to start pulling down on the jaw over here. Even though I got an extra spring that I showed you that I added in the front here, showed you that in the earlier video. Nevertheless, I can't pull it too tight. It can only be a, butt like this with no real tension on it. It'll end right here. Then I'll put this block in. This block that I showed you earlier in the video, I have not yet drilled a hole in it. But once this eye hook gets placed about here, maybe here, I only need it for my index finger to push down on this. That'll be the stop for this. Then I push this up in there, and it fits right in. It's got a little play in there, but that's all right. Basically, this is just going to keep the rod centered. The problem is this thing is pretty thick. So the rod is going to be rubbing up against that, but there's not much I can do about that. As long as it doesn't bind, I don't care. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Well, first of all, on this end I cut, like this, how sharp this is and sticking out. Well, I cut this off, filed it, and just put some tape on it right now. And I taped up the tubing so it wouldn't slide off. It's fit in there real tight. Then I cut a small portion of this 1/4-inch Teflon tubing, which I also bought at the hardware store, to give a place for my finger to sit, so you're not having that rope going across your finger. Over here, I'm going to put a washer here and a washer here, and then I'm going to burn this end off and make it fit tight, because this will just be like this. And then when I push down on this, after this gets done, it'll activate the jaw. Right now it won't work, but this is how it's going to be. Then I got to cut this off. Now, there's been a change in plans. As I said, this project is constantly changing. I found this in the junk box. It's already a 1-inch piece of aluminum with a hole already in it, so I don't need to put that in the drill press and do it, because this will fit perfectly in there. Now, this will slide up to this point here. And then, because it can't go any more than that, the rod will go through. The hole is a little bigger, but that's not a problem. I don't want any binding. So this will keep the rod centered. So that'll sit there. And what I can do to keep it from sliding out and in the way of the groove that I'm going to be putting here, I can put a little tiny screw in here just to keep this from sliding back out. That's not a problem, because that's what I was going to do with the wooden block too. Well, after hours and hours of trying to figure out how to make this trigger mechanism, I had a bolt here, and it was flushed out over here. I had another one here. I originally had it here, and I had this cord going across, operate by finger. It was very hard to pull this. I mean, my finger was getting tired just doing it a few times. So I took the bolt out of here, drilled a hole and put it here, so my index finger would work here and I'd have room for my rest of my fingers. That was even worse. It was just very hard to push down. I even had a little piece of Teflon tubing in there for easy on my finger, but it took a lot of pressure. See, the black mark is the rest point here, and this is full open. Well, end up making a loop and operated it with my finger, which probably I should have done in the first place. So I'll show you how that works. Okay, so basically it's going to be like this. And that gives me the full thrust, and it isn't bad on my finger at all. Now I know that my hand has got to be in this position, and my little finger is going to be over here, and boy, we got a lot of construction and stuff going next door here. So we got a lot of racket today. So this is where the I got to make the slot and the groove so my little finger can operate the eyes. I couldn't do nothing until I figured out this mechanism. So this is the way we're going to do it. And we still got plenty of room at the end of the stick to put the hook in at the end. Okay, you see this little slot here? That's going to be for the side-to-side motion of the eye rod. Then I got to cut a slot right down here so I can slide the eye rod in. And of course, naturally, I'll have this piece. Once I cut this out, I'll put that piece up in there, and I'll put a stop in there. Since I took these bolts out, now I got no more stops, so I need to have this about here. So what I'll do is I'll just slide it up in there, put a stop in there, temporary stop, just put a screw in there or something to keep this from going in any further. Okay, then drill a hole and put a screw in just to tighten it up against this aluminum here. That's all, and I can take out the other screw. This is for the rod to go through. So this rod will be coming out like this, bent over, and it'll have a hook in it, and then I can operate it with my little finger. I got the groove cut, but I'll tell you what, this piece of crap, Chinese made, what do you call them things now, Dremel tools are not worth hell. Not worth the powder to blow them to hell. Anyways, I had to use a regular saw to cut the groove to put this 1/8 inch rod through. And here, once I get the rod through up in here, then I can bend it up at this point, and it'll go back and forth like this to be an eyelet in there for my little finger to operate it. And before I can do that, I will now put this in, and it'll stop right at this point here, because I'll put a stop here. I'll put a screw down here temporarily just to keep it from going in anymore, and then I'll drill a little hole in here and put a set screw in there on the side somewhere. So this will be for the rod to go through the middle. Okay, like that. That's all. That's all she be. I don't want to put it in now because I got some other things I got to do yet. Well, I think this arrangement's going to work out quite nice. It's a little hard to pull down, but I got strong spring because I'm going to have a weight on there. Probably, I don't know, maybe a ½ pound of weight on this chin here, so shouldn't be more than that. So I need heavy string, but I could have used a thinner wire, a thinner rope. But anyways, with all these holes, this is what happens when you're building something from scratch, when you're trying to, build it yourself without anybody helping you and instructions and so forth. Because nobody, to my knowledge, has ever built one of these using PVC pipe. They say you can use it, but there is nowhere on the internet is there instructions as how to do it. So you gotta devise your own system. So anyways, that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to put this in, and I can't do any more with the eye mechanism yet because I got to paint the eyes, and I haven't bought the paint yet for that. Alright, I got Tommy out here doing a little videotaping. I've got the brass rod. It bends a lot harder to bend than I thought it would be. But I put it up to the slot that I made, and I got to cut this off so my little finger will operate this. And if you notice, the rod goes straight to the top, and I purposely did that so I can cut off. It's better to have it too long than too short. So I can cut off when I get the eye mechanism and I'm ready to put that in. I'll work that around and get that in. Now, I can always bring this down to make the adjustment necessary after I do the bends and everything. This is not easy stuff to bend. What we're going to do is, with the finger here, we're going to make the loop for the little finger. We're going to cut about here, so we'll have enough. I can't find my small bolt cutters, so I hope these aren't too big for this. Perfect. Okay. Now, this is how it operates, like this, with the little finger. And then, once this is all working properly, I put the bottom cap on. And it's not really weakened, it's only cut about halfway down. Alright, I bent it with a pair of pliers, so rather than try to get too fussy with this, I can always take and put a little piece of plastic or a tape and something to keep my finger on this. It's a little long here, but I guess it'll be alright. I got to do some adjustments on it yet. You can see that the bushing I put in there. See? Okay, so that gives it that action there. Well, I'm siliconing this in. I didn't want to do that because I wanted to paint the eyeballs before I put everything in, but I got a problem with this mechanism here. I didn't bend it right. It was supposed to come up through a little hole here, and I bent it in the wrong position, so I had to cut out so that the rod comes up. The rod is supposed to come out like this and then bend up and then over to go into here, but I have a feeling this is just laying down right now. This has got to go back up into this groove up here, so I just pulled it down now so I can silicone this, but I'm not going to be able to do any better than this, I'm afraid. I got silicone on the front here, and I'm going to put a bead of silicone on each inside here. There'll be more silicone, but right now this will be good enough. When this sets up, then I'll put more in underneath. It's very hard to get in there right now because the wood is spaced a little too far away from the side of the jug. So I put a dab of silicone here, and I'm going to put another dab of silicone over here. We're going to do that right now, and then we're going to just let this set overnight. Let this set overnight, and that will hopefully be strong enough. We're not going to disturb it. We got to put more inside and underneath where the bracket is and so forth. But right now, that's good enough. I had to be very careful we don't get any silicone on the eyes. Otherwise, the paint will never take. Over the top of this opening, there'll be a piece of leather or maybe even plastic with the eye holes in here. The nose is going to come down through here, of course, cover this up. And we got our pull ring for the mouth, which works very hard. Nothing I can do about that. And the only problem is this thing here, my little finger isn't long enough, and it keeps slipping out of my little finger. There's a problem with this, so still don't know if this project's going to succeed or not. That's it for today.